Shalom and welcome to Israel Policy Pod. I'm your host, Shanie Reichman, the Director of Strategic Initiatives and IPF Atid at Israel Policy Forum. On this week's episode, we're going to hear directly from Yotam Cohen, whose brother Nimrod was taken captive by Hamas on October 7th and is still being held hostage in Gaza. Yotam has worked tirelessly to secure the release of his brother and all of the remaining hostages. Every day that goes by without their release, these hostages are at greater risk of torture or death. And this episode serves as a critical reminder that every hostage has a family and a community that is anxiously waiting for their return. And while we celebrate Passover and commemorate the Jewish people's liberation from slavery in Egypt, we should remember that too many of us are not yet free. Hi, Yotam. Welcome to the Israel Policy Pod. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. We're speaking under very unfortunate circumstances, but we want to bring to light all the work you're doing to secure the release of Nimrod and all of the remaining hostages in Gaza. I was hoping you would start by telling us a little bit about who your brother is and anything you want us to know about him.
So my little brother Nimrod Cohen was kidnapped on the 7th of October. He was an IDF soldier stationed at the southern part of the Israeli-Gaza border between the two villages Nirim and Niroz. He was a tank crew member stationed there with his platoon. On that morning, on the 7th of October, Saturday, they woke up to the sirens like half of Israel. And being combat soldiers with the tank, they rushed to the border, to the bridge and the fence to shield the villages, to put themselves as a physical barrier because those terrorists were already storming the villages and massacring and kidnapping the civilians behind the front lines. So they put themselves. Unfortunately, they were massively outnumbered. Only the four of them, my brother and three others, against between 200 to 300 terrorists. They were massively outnumbered and the tank engine was sabotaged. So the tank was starting to get on fire and they had to open up the hatches in order to get some fresh air. And the terrorists managed to pull them out one by one. Out of the four of them, my brother was the only one to survive that day. The other three were killed and executed, but all four of them were taken hostages. My brother alive and the other three, their bodies were also taken. This happened at around 7:30 a.m. in the morning. It was more than a year and a half ago. My brother was 19 at the time. He's now 20. And the entire abduction was filmed by Hamas that morning and was uploaded to social media as a part of their psychological terror effort. And so we saw everything that morning. And ever since, we know that Nimrod is alive and we've been anxiously waiting for his return. Me, my little sister, Nimrod's twin, her name is Romy, and our two parents. And we've all been doing everything we could, but unfortunately it hasn't been enough yet.
When did you know that he had been taken captive?
We saw the first pictures by Hamas. I think the first picture ever to be seen was the one of the burning tank. And so we recognized it was Nimrod's. But the first evidence that made us sure was a video posted around 12 in that morning showing the entire abduction. And so we could see Nimrod's face and we knew for sure that he was the one to be abducted.
And your family's received some signs of life, is that right? Since
Yes,
then?
this was the initial evidence. 2 days after the IDF officers came to our house to declare Nimrod is officially a hostage. Ever since, we got multiple life signs from returning hostages. The first ones were from hostages who came back on the first hostage deal on November 23. Two of them saw him in the tunnels in captivity. And I think that the most recent and the most, I think, dominant ones were from the so-called first phase, the recent hostage deal, from three hostages who came back and could tell us in details the actual period of staying in captivity and how Nimrod has been doing. And I think a month ago, Hamas has posted a video from captivity before the release of one of the hostages, and his departure from captivity and him saying goodbye to his brother. And we could recognize Nimrod in this video. Although his face was blurred, we recognized a tattoo he has on his right arm. And so we could determine that this is Nimrod in the video. And it was the first and only visual life sign we have received.
I know that you and your family have been very actively engaging with many governments, including the Israeli government, to try to push them to make a deal to secure the release of your brother and, of course, all of the others. What has that been like? Has there been any progress on that front? Of course, we talk about this a lot in the podcast, Neri and I, that, every few weeks we get some sort of hopeful sign, but sometimes it works out. Oftentimes it doesn't, of course. So I'm wondering what sort of progress has been made or any holdups you're seeing.
So first we have to say that most of the hostages were released from captivity. So even though our struggle is yet to end, for many other families, they receive their loved ones. So in the general sense, I think there is a progress in this bigger problem. For us, especially, and Nimrod being a soldier, was kidnapped as a soldier. We knew right from the start that Nimrod is going to be one of the last hostages to be released, especially in the living hostages category, because it is a symbol being a soldier in captivity. We, right from the beginning, our family, we've advocated for a bigger and a comprehensive hostage deal. We've been saying right from the start that Israel should make a singular hostage deal to ensure the release of all the hostages, and in return end the war. Unfortunately, we're seeing that the Israeli government is limiting the negotiation talks only to partial deals that would not guarantee the end of the war and therefore would not bring Nimrod home. We've been seeing, I think, right after the first few months that there is no actual intention for Israel to get all the hostages and end the war. From what we've been seeing and understanding, Israel is trying to prolong the war for what we're seeing right now endlessly without an actual goal. And this is why, especially our family, we've been very vocal trying to promote and advocate for both in Israel and outside Israel for the idea of ending the war, putting as much public pressure as possible. Fortunately, right now we've not been successful yet.
Do you feel the support of the Israeli public and the people?
I think that this is huge point of light. I think point of hope for us. We are seeing all the recent polls in Israel in the major broadcasting or media channels. It's saying that between 67 and 70 something percent, the vast majority, almost three quarters of almost 75% of Israelis ending the release of all the hostages and ending the war. So we're seeing this. This is very much a stable statistics in the past 2 weeks. And in the past week, we're seeing a new phenomenon of soldiers in reserve in the IDF or military personnel who were high-ranking officers both in the army and other security agencies and the Israeli police with open letters publicly stating that they want the end of the war and the release of all the hostages. And it started from one letter who was published by former air pilots. This was the first letter. We're now at the 16th letter by I can't remember. So there are so many, and it counts in the tens of thousands of people. So we're feeling this actually recent mass support from the public.
It's definitely how we see it here, too. I would love to talk to you about the American side of the equation because, of course, President Trump has issued some very strong statements demanding the release of all hostages, and he's actually held direct talks with Hamas. And of course, he had some success with securing the release in the beginning of his when he took office. So, curious how you perceive America's role in these hostage negotiations.
So I think that everybody in Israel understood that the Americans have a big role to play in this negotiation. At first, I'd like to say that for me, as an Israeli citizen, this is very unfortunate. The only government that owes me something, is the Israeli government. I, as an Israeli citizen, have rights as an Israeli citizen. And I should, I think, come to my government with demands and requests, the release of my brother being one of them. The fact that we as Israeli citizens, I'm a brother of an IDF soldier was kidnapped during active duty, have to go to other countries and to plead to foreign leaders and foreign elected officials to help me in my internal struggle in Israel. says how dire the situation is. And we had very high hopes when Trump entered office, and I think in some sort of way he delivered, releasing 38 hostages, most of them living hostages, which is something that cannot be put aside. It is a very important thing. And 2 days ago, my father returned from New York. We're still, even these days, trying to do whatever we can to ensure more so-called foreign pressure on our government, because we believe that this is the only thing that can result in the release of my brother. And I hope that we'll see some results in the future. But again, it is very sad for me as an Israeli citizen that I understand my government simply doesn't care enough about my brother's well-being, that we need other so-called agents or other forces to do something about this. But this is the situation we're in right now.
Hmm. What sort of pressure has your father been asking for? What was his experience like traveling to the States?
I think the experience is very positive. When we go to other countries abroad, especially in the US, people are very polite, very nice, very lovely, which is something that cannot be said about meetings with Israeli elected officials, especially in our government. Um, what sort of pressure we require? The same pressure that has been put by Trump that resulted in the first phase of the hostage deal. Trump threatening even both sides, both Hamas and Israel, saying you have a deadline to reach a hostage deal. The first deadline was the 20th of January, the day of Trump's entering office, and we saw that in that exact same day a deal was signed. And I hope to see. I think that the most positive outcome right now is to see more pressure like this. Trump's giving a deadline, and we see both sides sort of making the way towards it. And I think it's only massive pressure on both sides, both on Israel side and Hamas side, with the mediators who pressure on Egypt and Qatar to get this deal, and pressure on Israel to agree for ending the war. This is the only thing that will result in the hostage deal, and this is what we've been asking all along the way with partial success.
How do you perceive the role of Qatar and Egypt in all of this? Because of course they are pretty active players in the negotiations too.
We know that Qatar has been hosting some of Hamas high-ranking officers and officials, which is very unfortunate. For us, Israel, Qatar is I won't say an enemy state, but not so friendly of a state. Um, they've been the mediators, and we need them to get this hostage deal. Apart from that, I don't see any special connection with them. We've been asking both in the US and countries in Europe to put more pressure on the mediators because they have such good relations with Hamas, to get them to some sort of an agreeing point, somewhere in the middle. But behind that, I have me as a small citizen, I have no idea what is really going on behind closed doors.
What's your relationship with the other families been like? I imagine there's some sort of community that you've built. Do you go together to protest? Do you go together on these tours of the United States and to speak with Israeli leaders?
So at first there were more than 250 hostages. So there were a lot of families. But as the time went on, the amount of hostages in captivity has decreased. So right now there are only 59 hostages. And so we are a small community of families of hostages. And we've known each other for about a year and a half, and so we're some sort of a community, a big family of sort. For us, Nimrod being a soldier, we have the even smaller community, the sub community of the families of the soldier hostages, and to all we're going together to all the meetings with Minister of Defense, with the Chief of Staff of the IDF. So this is our sub community, and everybody it belongs to a small sub community. Those who were kidnapped from the Nobel Festival, the hostages from the villages, from the kibbutzim. Each kibbutz has his own community. But we operate, I think, in this big community of family hostages. Just Saturday night was the Little Seder, the Passover evening, and we had this dinner in the hostage square with other hostage families, simply to be together because we've become such a big family.
Do you find that there are very differing opinions regarding the contours of a deal, what risk sacrifices Israel should be making, what sort of pressure, or are people mostly aligned?
I think that at the beginning there were various point of views regarding what should be done, especially regarding the fact that each family had their own political view and political opinion regarding what should be done. But I think that in this point of time, I wouldn't say all the families, but the vast majority of the families agree or understand the simple fact that we won't see all the hostages, especially the living ones, at home without ensuring the end of the war. And so even those who find this pill hard to swallow or politically disagree with this notion simply understood or would say gave in to this reality, but understood that if they want to see their son at home, they have to call for the end of the war, even if it's hard. And I think that putting aside one, two, three families who are strongly against this for political and religious reasons, the other families are advocating for ending the war.
That makes a lot of sense. I think at the beginning of the war, many of us were under the impression that advancing a war could help release the hostages, and that sort of pressure could work. And at this point, I think most of us know that's unfortunately not, or for better or worse, it's just no longer the case, and that a deal is really the only method that can achieve what we want. I'm curious what message you want to convey to the international community, any policymakers about the importance of resolving the hostage crisis. Obviously, this is very personal for you, but it also fits into a broader geopolitical context as well.
Um, of course, I have it's called skin in the game because my brother is a hostage, but what we've been trying to convey to world leaders is that, in contrary to what our government is saying, the vast majority of Israelis um, is pro-ending the war. 70% of Israelis want an immediate ceasefire and simply ending the war because they understand that nothing good will come by continuing the war. The vast majority of Israelis. And our government is doing the exact opposite, trying to prolong the war at any price. And in doing so, resulting in more hostages killed, more civilians on both sides killed. And we want the world to know that the Israeli people want peace and want to rehabilitate the region, want to rehabilitate the state of Israel. And we as Israeli know that this cannot be done without the release of the hostages, because the release of the hostages is the first phase in a bigger rebuild. And we want peace at the end of the day, and we want to eradicate Hamas, but we understand that this can no longer happen with military pressure. Like you said, at the beginning, at the start of the war, 100% of the families were pro military pressure. I was a big supporter of the military pressure, to say the least. But we've understood the reality is very different. And what I want the world people, the world leaders to know is that when they call to the end of the war and for the immediate ceasefire, they have to know that they had the people of Israel uh, agreeing them and supporting them, even though our government says otherwise. And our government, for most parts, especially in this part, does not reflect the will of the Israeli people in its opinion. This is the most important thing for us to convey.
How has your relationship been with the Israeli media? Have you felt supported by them? Have you been in many conversations with them?
I think that after the 7th of October, we found ourselves public figures whose opinions uh, are looked after, and we've been finding ourselves in all the major broadcasting channels and studios, which is a very weird feeling. to switch from a very private person to a public figure, which with a public opinion. I think that generally the media channels be very supportive. You can see the people behind this, the actual reporters, take this very close to heart and actually feel us and feel our pain. And they've been chatting with us and talking to us very personally. How can they do more and what else can be done? And we had the good feeling that they will do whatever needed to aid us in our struggle and to help us. And although having all these interviews in the Israeli media channels is very exhausting and very tiring to jump between studios, the actual sense of support is very much ensuring.
Then let me ask you directly. We work with the American Jewish community and policymakers in Washington. What's important for us to know? And I'll ask specifically about the American Jewish community. How can we be supportive?
I think that when we speak to Jewish communities, both in the US and also in Europe, I almost get the feeling that they're sometimes misinformed or miseducated about what is really going on inside Israel, about the inside politics of Israel, and even the fact that I said that 70% of the Israelis support the end of the war. When we tell this to Jews both in the US and in Europe, they're very much surprised about this. They say, how can this happen? The other side, the Palestinian side, or the Hamas side, is the side that should logically to them should support the ceasefire and the end of the war. And the Israel side should be the one saying we cannot stop the war. And this is what we've been trying is to educate as much as possible what is really going on inside Israeli politics. And I urge everyone who take this close to heart and really cares about the Israeli people and Jewish people in general, really do your searching and read as much as possible Israeli media, Israeli articles to know what is really going on, because what is happening inside Israel does not reflect to what you see outside of Israel. And all those who want to support the Israeli people and really want to support the state of Israel, not the government of Israel, should help us, and especially us, the hostage families, should help promoting the idea of a ceasefire and ending the war. Of course, with releasing all the hostages, because from what we understand, these things are coming together, always come together. Um, Ceasefire and and the hostage deal. And the state of Israel has been in an ongoing war for a year and a half. Both states of Israel, and I think it's important to say that the civilians, the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, I think that at the end of the day, we need this region to heal and we need to build something sustainable, because from the 7th of October, our people has been in an ongoing war without any chance to heal or rehabilitate or even rest for a little. Every couple of days, there are missiles entering Israel and there are terror attacks, and there are more soldiers dying in these multiple fronts we're managing. And I think it's the most important thing for Israel right now is to end the war and rethink how we're not destroying things, but how are we going to build things.
And I'll just share on the public opinion polling that in Israeli media, you see almost weekly polling on the major news channels of the Israeli public opinions around the war and a hostage ceasefire deal. They are often not translated into English, although you can find them somewhere. But I just think it's important to say. Perhaps some of the source of the miscommunication. Thank you so much for your time, Yotam. If there's anything else you want to share, please do. I will just say it's been a privilege to be able to platform your voice and make sure that you are heard and your story is heard. And of course, we're always thinking and talking about and praying for and protesting for across communities the release of all of the hostages, including Nimrod.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Yotam Cohen for sharing his brother Nimrod's story and his perspective on the hostage family's ongoing struggle to bring their loved ones home. 59 Israelis remain in captivity after an unimaginable 558 days. This Passover, as we remember the exodus from Egypt, we should also reflect on the joyous reunions of the hostages who did return home to their families this past year. And we pray that all the hostages remaining in captivity are going to see freedom in the year to come. Special thanks to our producer, Jacob Gilman, and all of you who support Israel Policy Forum's work. Please like and rate this podcast and subscribe if you don't already, and do consider making a tax-deductible donation to Israel Policy Forum so we can keep being a credible source of analysis and ideas on issues such as these that we all care very deeply about. And most importantly, thank you for listening, and Chag Sameach to all those celebrating. Thank you.